we'll see how it goes, and I'll open it up for questions right now. All right.
We all know that fossil fuels have gotten a lot more expensive recently. We all also know that worldwide, locally, and everywhere in between, there's a lot more focus on climate change. I'd be interested in hearing what the candidates have to say about how Parkville can be a more sustainable community and what specific plans you would like to see implemented.
Now, is your question for all the candidates?
Oh, I didn't know I had to pick.
No, I was just asking.
Yeah, I'd love to hear
All
from
right,
except
all the
the
can-
judge, probably.
All right. So yeah, thank you.
A recording or did it just start? Mark.
Sorry. I worked in companies and organizations where we had to think strategically of how are we going to grow and adapt. And that's what I want to bring to the table. And I think it's a great question. It's a fair question. It's disappointing that we probably haven't thought about it already. Charging cars have been out for a while. It doesn't need to be fuel prices that are reaching $5 a gallon for us to have this conversation right now. I think we can be a leader. We want to be a leader. Parkville, we pride ourselves on being out in front. And I think this is one way that we can do that.
We have an initiative. We just haven't. Go ahead, Dean.
No.
Go ahead, Dean. I already spoke.
Who wants it?
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to have a plan. One thing would be helpful if we had a committee on the environment and climate change, and what are things our city can do. A lot of cities have engaged very heavily in climate change, and I think there are things we could do. I'd like to get citizens involved in that, and how can we go about what are things we could do, what are some things other communities have done, because there's been a lot of action in this area, and what things make sense for Parkville. So, did you want that,
Yeah.
or Stephen might want to
Stephen, you want to talk?
No, I'm fine, Stephen. I concur with all of this.
Okay. I'm a member of Citizens Climate Lobby. I've been working on climate change for a long time, and I've helped write Mark's Climate Action Plan, Regional Climate Action Plan, and very active on this. Mark did pass a climate action plan for the region, and it was adopted by vote of the counties, the 9 counties in the Mark area, calling for the metropolitan area to be carbon neutral by 2050 and having other kinds of goals in there. The city council, the board of aldermen here, and the mayor passed a resolution supporting that in the fall, as some people mentioned. Kansas City has just published its city climate action plan, the draft, calling for Kansas City to be carbon neutral by 2040 and its municipal operations to be carbon neutral by 2030. So the region is moving out. and it needs to move out. There are two primary elements that I think the city can affect, and one is planning and zoning and development, because development drives carbon footprints. The other thing is building codes. There are new building codes that have been published and are being adopted throughout the country, which put more insulation in houses and all the kinds of hookups people will need to electrify their households and, you know, to power their EVs at home. There are certain people, like builders in the fossil fuel industry, who are fighting to have these building codes not adopted by the cities and the responsible governments. The cost of building stuff wrong is extremely high. Okay, we've got to think that what we build now is going to be around for 100 years, and we have to envision the useful lives of these buildings, of these communities, and see if it passes the 100-year test. And a lot of what we're building now doesn't. It's the construction is done in some ways it's done immaculately, in some ways in terms of insulation and in terms of codes for energy efficiency it's done very poorly. The model is basically build it cheap and use massive amounts of natural gas to heat it. That is the model of the building industry right now, and it needs to change, and the new building codes are trying to change it. We can do this, but the cost of building it wrong and then going and retrofitting it in the future is prohibitive. It's going to cost you 3 times as much as it would cost to do it right the first time. So we had a saying when I was in the Army, let's do it right the first time. It was our motto. We didn't always live up to that. But at least we can try to do it right the first time.
And this speaks a little bit to the affordability issue. And the Parkville Master Plan, the Parkville Comprehensive Plan 2040, one of the items on there is housing affordability and affordable housing. And just a question for everybody, kind of is there a price point for you, or what's affordable or not affordable in this community? What's your opinion on affordable housing? If you support it, where would it go? And just kind of, how does your vision match with the Comprehensive Plan for 2040 for Parkville with respect to affordable housing?
Take the first crack at that. Well, I think one thing in affordability is somebody mentioned earlier, our young people coming back after they go to college and that. Is their housing here affordable for them to come back and live here? Another thing, there's just been some new census data out, and one of the things, there's more older adults. They're a bigger percent of the population here. We all knew that that's happening everywhere. But one of the things I noticed for Parkville, between 2010 and 2020, the number of young people it was like 6 and 14, not just went down in percentage, it went down in absolute numbers. So while the city's growing up to 7,000, the number of kids, 6 to 14, is going down. Also, the number of people, and I think it was like age 30 to 44, also was going down while the population's going up. So it seems to me that maybe we're losing young families in Parkville. And so there's probably a number of issues, but one of the issues may be housing. And is there housing affordable for folks to start families and start their housing in the community? And so when I would talk affordable, that would be one of the first places I would look. And what can we do between our building codes and our development policies to encourage more housing that those folks, those young families could live in?
Oh, there you go.
Sorry. Price point. I think you really got to look at the median income and then start backing out. I mean, it's a mathematical equation when they talk about, okay, what's the average income and how much you can afford when it comes to a living wage. And that would probably give you a good indication of where that would be at for our city. You know, a lot of cities are talking affordability, they're talking attainability, they're using all kinds of unique words. The reality is, you know, Parkville is a pretty expensive place to live, right? Not just buying a house, but personal property taxes, right? I think you could see that in the conversations that we were having around the school board initiative or the tax initiative for the schools. We have to have conversations though with our citizens. We have to have honest conversations, right? The 435, you know, Creekside. I moved to Parkville 5 years ago, and I'm hearing all this concern. And, you know, then it comes out that, well, we had to do that because we were going to go bankrupt, right? We couldn't afford it. And so we've made decisions, right, wrong, or different because we had to stay afloat, maybe. But these conversations have to happen with our community. And so I think it's a bigger conversation versus just, well, do we agree with the affordability and creating these houses? We got to understand what we're giving up, what we're gaining from that, and what we're trying to accomplish. What are our goals? I think there's a miss when I think about the master plan. And, you know, it's, you know, in business, you know, they say anything over 3 years is just kind of, you know, it really doesn't make sense, right? I mean, you can think about a 20, 40 out plan, and that sounds great on paper, but the economy, everything's changing so fast, right? The reality, things are moving quick. And we can't sit quiet. We can't wait a year, 2 years. 2 years is too long in a municipality, a small municipality. Things change. So we have to be quick on this, but we have to have those conversations, and we got to have real conversations with our community and what that means, right? That might mean that you live in the National and, you know, you have $1 million home, but there could be a $300,000 home close by. Are you okay with that? Let's be honest. You know, let's have real conversations. Let's stop hiding from what really matters to us. If that's what you want, you don't want a $300,000 home next to you, then say it, right? Let people know where you stand so then people can make wise decisions and informed decisions about whether or not they want to be in Parkville. And I think you're seeing that as we talk about numbers of growing families that don't want to come to Parkville. Yeah, you know, I look around and just me running for election, the negativity, the conversations that have happened, be either behind my back or to my face of, well, you know, it's the old regime. This is what we're going to continue to do. It is what it is. Yeah, I think that drives part of it too. I don't think it's just affordability. I think there's a culture piece here as well in Parkville, and we got to start having real conversations with ourselves and with each other.
All right, thank you.
Andrew, I'm a little concerned. Do you want to set the housing price based on the median income? And what I see in Parkville, to be quite honest with you, is a lack of diversity, a lack of affordable housing, and that's not good for any community. And I've also been made aware. Do you have a set price point that you feel that houses should be set out in this community? Because is that your platform that the houses should be built to the income, or should we be building houses to attract all types of people into our community and to make our community more diverse? Because I think that is lacking in Parkville, to be quite honest with you. And I moved here because it was the only place I could find a ranch home. I could not find a ranch home in the community I used to live in, which was Liberty, which is more diverse than Parkville. So are you saying that we're going to build to the median income? Because that is, to me, is not realistic. So what are you saying? That people that in the National should have the right to say, well, I have $1 million house. You want to build a $100,000 house down the road because these young people need a house they can afford, but that's too close to the National. So no, we don't want you here. I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so let me add a little clarification. What I was saying to the price point, when you try to think about a living wage, right? You got to look at those incomes that you're trying to attract. So to your point, we want more diversification. Well, what does that median income look like, right? And then you develop to that strategy. So I'm not advocating for a $300,000 price point or building to that. What I'm saying is, if you go to these meetings where we talk about planning and zoning, we talk about plans, what happens is exactly the example you gave, where there are conversations around we need to bring diversity into our city, right? And we're landlocked, right? Parkville's landlocked. Look around. It's whether you're surrounded by, wetlands or, areas that are really hard terrain to build, right? For lack of better words. And so when you're forced to look at certain sectors and different places within the, next to maybe communities like Wrist Lake, like the National, like communities that have very expensive homes, those are conversations that are happening and they get shot down, right? They get shot down because, it's my belief they get shot down because folks feel like it's going to lower their property value, right? Those are the conversations I'm having. I think we have to educate ourselves and have a real conversation of what that means. I don't think we're making informed decisions at this point in time. I think we're making emotional decisions. When I go to these meetings and I hear people say, well, I don't want affordable housing, I see you kind of, maybe I'm confusing you more. But when I go to these meetings and I see folks shoot down well, we don't want affordable housing, it's going to increase crime. How do we know that? Are we making assumptions? Are we looking at stats? I'm a statistician guy, but I also know that stats don't lie, but liars use stats. You can manipulate things in a way that you can make a compelling argument, to support your case. So all I'm saying is we have to have a real conversation about what it is and who it is that we want to attract to our community. And then what does that mean? And so I'm not advocating for a certain price point. What I'm advocating for is we got to have that conversation and then we back into what does that look like? Because again, the conversation is with everyone. It's not for me to decide. The conversation is with the neighbors, the folks in this room, and those within the city to have a real meaningful input about what it is, what do we want our future to look like? And for some of us, it might feel like, well, the 80% decided that that's not what they want. So then what does that mean for the other 20%? What do we have to do? How do we find compromise? But these are the difficult conversations I think Parkville is going to find itself over the next few years. You're kind of at this pendulum, right? Of we want to grow, but we want to stay quaint. We want to stay, really Main Street, but yet we got downtown and then we have 435 area, right? I think all of these things are coming together and they're coming to a head. And it's going to take a lot of conversations with our community and with developers, and for us to make an informed and a decision that's going to be good for the future of Parkville. I don't think there's a right answer, I guess, to keep it short to what you're asking right now at this point. I think we really need to have further conversations with our constituents and our neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on the conversation part. And I think as poor as the city, some may think the city is, we have a comprehensive plan. Affordable housing is a part of that plan. So what we need to really do is start developing strategies to implement those parts of the plan that we all think are important. And so I think the mechanisms are there. We just need to decide what our priorities are and then start working on getting those down, whether it's improving the parks, whether it's addressing affordability of housing, or why are young families not moving here, or whatever the issues are. We need to decide on those priorities, and then we need to, as a community, start working on them.
Follow up?
Yeah.
Okay, one follow up.
It's a brand new
Okay,
question.
brand new. There you go.
Sorry. He's close to me, so I'm just going to go ahead and blast you now. I am a super huge supporter of leaving Platte Landing Park as a passive park. That park is unique. It's beautiful. It has a nature sanctuary in one part and a poorly built wetlands in the other part, which I hope we can get fixed. The vision for that originally in 2013 was a completely passive park with wetlands and everything. The ball fields, we hope 68%. I repeat, 68% of 905 respondents said they did not want to see any athletic fields in Platte Landing Park. I would like to know how committed you are to keeping Platte Landing Park a unique and passive park for the city of Parkville focusing on the river, focusing on that uniqueness of the river. And that's my question. Thank you.
Are we going to start down here? My wife and I walk around a lot, and we love going down to the park. You know, we go down there all the time, and we walk down, you know, Crooked Road. As we've been told, we're probably being illegal. I might have to see the judge here, and we also walk down Bell, where there's no sidewalk, which is a concern, and that needs to be fixed as well. But we love to go down there and walk, and I am 100% committed. I would never vote as an alderman for anything that would change that into an athletic field down there. To me, you know, the existing parking lots should not be extended, you know, into the sanctuary. It should just be the walking path that it is, and let's let the trees grow. I was down there just the other day, and I noticed that a lot of those trees they planted a year ago, they had to take out as they were ripping up that, you know, plastic matting that they put in. What a tragedy that is. You know, you know, it's like, do it right the first time, you know, put down the right matting and then plant the trees, instead of put down the matting, plant the trees, rip up the trees, take out the matting. If you don't think stuff through and think about the long-term consequences, you pay a big price. But I would never vote for any proposition to change it into ball fields.
I agree as well. I live downtown Parkville, and I use the park every day. I ride a bike in the park, so I'm aware of everything that goes on there. I take the trail into Riverside. I know every inch of that place, and I love the green space, and I want to keep it that way. So if I'm elected, that's where I stand.
Well, since I led the charge to keep it that way, you know how I stand, so.
So I live in Wrist Lake, and you guys might be familiar with a development that was supposed to go in, and it's still proceeding, right, on the backside of Wrist Lake that's going to be overlooking the sanctuary. Originally, when that development was coming before the planning and zoning, it was supposed to be four to five story buildings, depending on who you spoke to, that would be affordable housing, right? Anywhere from 750 to more. But they were supposed to be retirement communities, right? That was the pitch. That was what it was going to be. And I'll be honest with you, I know very little about watershed, stormwater management, EPA, but just like if I'm a mayor or I become mayor, I'm not going to pretend like I do know. I'm going to go reach out to the experts, and that's exactly what I did. I went out and talked to attorneys. I talked to EPA folks. I talked to the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Long story short, we had a group that was led by multiple individuals within our community that led the charge. And if you know anything about Wrist Lake, going against the developer that was planning that, you know, it's kind of political suicide. It's personal, you know, you're kind of slicing your own throat in your own community. But it was important. It was important because that's what draws a lot of us here to Parkville. It's what drew my wife, my kids to Parkville, because we love the nature trails. We love the sanctuary. We didn't want to see that compromise for just some buildings, right? And these are the things that we need to start having a conversation about. So I'm committed, yes. I've done the legwork, yes. But it needs to be more than that, because I don't plan on being mayor forever. So we got to think about the ordinances that we have to put in place to make sure those things stay sacred when we're long gone, right? We should already have tree preservation ordinances in place. The fact that we're talking about, oh, we're hiring a parks director after how many years since we passed the 0.5% sales tax? I'm excited about that. That's great news. I think we should have done it sooner, right? And that's what I struggle with. That's why I'm here today. I don't have government experience. I've not been a mayor anywhere else. But what I can tell you about is I'm passionate. And if I don't know, I'm going to go find out. And I'm going to keep digging until I find out. I don't have ties. I'm not afraid to stand up to people. I'm not afraid to call people out. And I want people to call me out, because we need to be held accountable and we need to be transparent. But get back to your original question. From day one, we're going to set ordinances in place to preserve our green spaces. We need to make sure that happens long after we're gone. Right? We are the city of trees, and we should be making sure that we're acting like that.
Whoops, sorry. Sorry.
Plan that.
Yeah, I did. That's Marcus's fault. He put us in this order. Yeah, I'm also for keeping that passive, and I agree. We need to hire a parks director. We need to have a maintenance strategy for our parks put in place, discussed with us, put the budget towards it. And then we need to develop, or I guess recommit ourselves to the vision for our parks, and then start using our sales tax, which we all passed, to implement that vision. And I agree, if folks would see the 2013 vision, I think that would sell a lot of people if there are any questions about what that park could look like. And I do want to put a plug in for the Planning Commission, because I serve on it. That development, and there was an earlier development as well that was over towards the National, came in with tall condominiums. We felt they were inappropriate. We felt they didn't comply with the comprehensive plan. One we turned down, one we sent back, and now those condominiums are no longer going to be a part of it. So the system can work. And there are folks, like the people on the Planning Commission, there are good folks that care about this city just like all of we do. So
if I could just add one more thing, when it comes, no? Well, so when it comes down to the survey, the fact that we just did a survey, my understanding is we did a survey previously that said we didn't want ball fields, right? And then we still moved forward with ball fields and saying that we're going to do drawings that were going to cost $50,000, $60,000. We're going to take those drawings back to the community and we're going to get feedback. And then we're going to pause and then say, no, we're not going to do that, but we're still doing the drawings, right? So that's the fiscal responsibility. That's the due diligence, the checks and balances that aren't happening, right? Let's be honest. Yes, the planning and zoning curtailed some of these developments, but it wasn't without community involvement. We can go back and look at those meetings. We can go back and look at the actual recommendation before that meeting took place, and it was all but rubber stamped, right? The fact that we had a plan that came forth to the committee that they said, everything looks good and it's in line, but yet the stormwater management plan was for 3 buildings, not for 4. That's a huge miss. And somebody needs to be held accountable for that, right? And if you don't want to be held accountable, then you probably shouldn't be in that role. Sorry, I know you didn't want me to speak, but.
All right, we're going to open up the next question to Zoom. We got a couple on there, and with time running short, I want to be sure to get at least a couple of those, but we will come back to in-person questions.
Great. So this question is for the mayoral candidates. I have a perception that zoning laws mean nothing in Parkville and are easily changed. I also believe that developers get 51% of the vote and citizens get 49% of the vote concerning development and zoning. How can you, as mayor, change my perception?
So I know there is that perception, but I don't think any of the candidates up here are going to be the quote unquote developers candidates. And our zoning laws are only accepted when we exempt or we modify the comprehensive plan. And so one of the strategies, one of the parts of my platform, if you go to my website, is that we need to set criteria of when the master plan, under what circumstances we would amend the master plan to accept some of the developments like we were just talking about, these condominiums. Right now, it's sort of loose. The comprehensive plan is a guide, and so there's always a good reason to, make an exception. I think there needs to be really concrete reasons so everybody knows under what circumstances would we really consider modifying the master plan. And that's when the zoning gets changed. So we have to have clear criteria for that, and then we have to follow through. And that's what the Planning Commission did on these last two condominium projects. And we need to keep that, and we need to make it clear what those criteria are.
So I think Marcus touched on this earlier. The mayoral system here in Parkville, it's not a strong mayor system. It's not really a weak mayor system. It's kind of in between, right? And so to give confidence, right, there's going to have to be a lot of communication that happens. We need to make sure that everyone is informed of what's happening and what's taking place when these conversations are put forth planning and zoning to say, hey, we want to change this, right? We need to think about putting in ordinances to make it easier for our aldermen and folks that are in power to lean into real decisions, right? Because I think a lot of what happens if you go to some of these meetings, and Dean, you touched on it, it's a little wishy-washy, right? And it puts our folks in a tough spot to interpret it. And we gotta make sure that we tighten up those things to make sure that we can give back the confidence to the citizens that say, look, we're going to adhere to these guidelines and these ordinances and these preservations and these zoning maps, things that are in place, right? And to the point of developers get 51%. Look, I'm not anti-development. I think development is good in some regard, right? But it's got to be thoughtful development. As I spoke of earlier, Parkville is landlocked. We only have so much. And once we get rid of it, the green spaces, they're gone. So we need to think about what are those trade-offs and have real conversations. So like Dean mentioned, I don't think anybody up here is aligned with a developer. I'm certainly not, just based on my past experience and history proves that I'm not. But my commitment to you all is if I'm elected mayor, I'm going to stand out in front and I'm going to hold everyone accountable, and we're going to have conversations. And if people make decisions that aren't in line, we're going to call people out on it. And it shouldn't hurt people's feelings. Like this, we have rules, we have guidelines for a reason. And so we need to adhere to them.
Can I make one more statement? This is more along the lines of the role of the mayor. What can the mayor do? And maybe address a little of Marcus's how does City Hall run? So I consider our mayoral form of government a weak form of government. The mayor votes only for ties. So I think the current mayor has voted like 2 or 3 times in all her time in office. So the mayor exerts influence by building relationships first with the community. So go out and meet with neighborhood groups periodically, meet in every ward to talk about what the issues are. But secondly, and just as important, the mayor needs to build relationships with the 8 aldermen. What's their priorities? What's the mayor's priorities, and how to build consensus on the Board of Aldermen? And third, the mayor needs to build a relationship, particularly with the city administrator, but the city staff. The mayor acts as the liaison to some degree between the Board of Aldermen, the citizens, and the city staff. And I think that can be improved, let's say, from what it's been. There needs to be more of the staff being responsive to the mayor and to the Board of Aldermen. And so the issues that are important to us, like the parks and other things we've talked about, how we treat development, needs to be reflected in how the staff performs. And the mayor's going to play a key role in making sure to hold everybody's feet to the fire. When you call in to Public Works or wherever and you don't get a call back, or they say, nope, we can't do it, instead of saying, let's sit down or let's meet with your alderman and figure out how we can address this, that's got to be a tone set first and foremost by the mayor, and then of course the Board of Aldermen as well. So.
All right, another Zoom question, and then we'll come back to in-person.
Excellent. Thank you. With interest rates increasing, the cost to the city for issuance of bonds is increasing our long-term debt obligations. What are some things that this will impact in your current plans? And what steps will you take to mitigate so these costs are not passed on to our future residents? It doesn't specify who this question is directed to.
Well, to the extent that we issue more long-term debt, as interest rates go up, that's going to be more cost to us. So we're going to have to be very cautious. You know, that's frequently how you fund principally infrastructure, so new streets, sewers, and parts of the city, issues like that. I think one opportunity that we have, as you know, last year, Congress and the administration passed a huge trillion-dollar T's and B's. Does it really mean trillion-dollar infrastructure plan? So there's going to be a lot more infrastructure money for things like streets, like completing the redevelopment of Highway 9. So we need to make sure that Parkville's at the table at the Mid-America Regional Council and other forums where that money is divvied up to make sure that we get our fair share. I mean, the improvements on Highway 9 that are going in now, a good portion of that came from federal highway dollars that the city applied for through the Mid-America Regional Council and we got. So we have an opportunity now to use more of those funds and lessen the burden on our own and thus on the amount of debt we have to issue.
So, obviously I agree with Dean's last part, which is, the federal funds that are available, we need to look and see what we can pull into our community. I think we also need to explore, what have we given developers or businesses to participate in our city? And do we continue that kind of, back and forth of maybe giving tax breaks or not giving tax breaks? I think that's something that, and I'll be honest with you, I obviously don't have those details and I'm not going to speculate, but I think getting into office and just kind of sitting back for 4 months and really trying to understand what are some of those decisions that we have before us and what do we need to do to evaluate how do we create a path going forward. Another thing that somebody had mentioned in my canvassing, and I don't know this to be true, our city hall. I guess we rent that. We don't truly own that is what I've been told. And if you talk to folks in City Hall, they don't even maybe know when that lease is up. Again, I don't know that to be true, but there's a lot of financial questions when you start to peel back of, okay, so where is our money going? What is it being spent on? How do we bring it in? And how do we want to bring it in? And how do we want to spend it going forward?
We do not rent City Hall, just to make that clear. I don't know where that information came from, but any of the other aldermen want to weigh in on that are here? Brian?
I know we had a similar to kind of this issue
Right.
on the no tax. Oh, great! I'll give you a microphone here. Yeah, this is recorded. Okay. It's similar to kind of the no tax bond initiatives. I'm pretty sure that the city hall was under one of those. So it's paid for through debt levies. But the city owns it. But when we have a debt levy coming due in 2024, it could come up to vote again, and we can use that perhaps for the police station out west or more roads or Bell Road sidewalks or what have you. But perhaps we can involve resident. I think all y'all seem to be interested in that, I as well, and getting resident input about what the priority should be in terms of that development. But in terms of City Hall, it was a debt project, but it is an owned project by the city. Good. Sorry.
Thanks.
Next question. Kelly?
Mine will be quick. My focus is the downtown district. And as many people know, a lot of visitors to our community and people who don't live in Parkville know Parkville as the downtown district, the Main Street and the parks and the river and our local businesses. I just want to know, and this question is for the mayor candidates, what are your thoughts about our downtown district and how your leadership would support our Main Street program?
Tried to miss it.
So thoughts on downtown district? It obviously is a draw for many people who come to downtown Parkville. And how do you support it? Well, you got to start having conversations with the businesses, right? And understand, okay, do we want to reface some of the infrastructure down there? I think that's already been taking place. And I think you're seeing, the fruits of maybe that with drawing more people into downtown. I mentioned it kind of off the cuff earlier, but things that like strategically placing charging stations in downtown, right? Those are things as a business that we can do to drive and kind of contain those folks that come in for a little bit longer, right? We can look at subsidizing that or not subsidizing it if it makes sense. But I think we got to start thinking creatively of how we start to draw people in and keep them into downtown. I don't think there's an easy answer. I mean, downtown Parkville has been downtown Parkville, right? And now you have folks who don't live around downtown and on 435 that say, well, what about over here? It's our entertainment district. So how do those things start to work together? How do we maintain the quaintness where we have the quaintness, and then also try to develop and keep ahead of the curve where we can?
Yeah, I think, although I know the city has a relationship with downtown, it hasn't always been the smoothest, let us say. So I think that we need to give some attention to the city's relationship with downtown. I know some personalities have gotten in the way, and we'll have to work around those, but the city can work. There was, I think it's been 2 years ago now, that some of the downtown property owners came to the city. They wanted a requirement that only retail be located in the ground floor of businesses along Main Street, and the city worked with them to develop an ordinance to do that, and I think it's been pretty successful. And so there are examples of how we can work together. I would also like to add that I would like to see a better relationship, a more fruitful relationship between the city and Park University as well, and that kind of fills into the downtown. We're a university town, but you don't see much of that in downtown. And so it seems like there's some synergy there, that if we work more closely with the university, that we could make some things happen on that end as well.
This is actually a perfect question to wrap up that and to piggyback on what was just said. But what is the relationship between Parkville and the county commissioners? And to what extent are the commissioners working collaboratively with Parkville to make county land and facilities available to Parkville to keep us all on the cutting edge? For example, this person gives charging stations for electric cars, etc.
Thanks for letting me go first.
I went first last time. So
Pretty clever. Well, I think the city, and I can't honestly address to what extent our relationship is currently with the county, but the city has to work with the county on both on regional things and local things. They have worked closely together, I know, on parks, because Platt Landing Park was donated or given to us by the county, and then the city agreed to maintain it once it was given to us. We've used county park sales tax money for a lot of improvements in our park, so we need to have a close working relationship with the county. There's also little administrative things, if you go along Highway 45, 1 minute you're in Parkville, the next minute you're in the county, the next minute you're in Parkville, the next minute, so there has to be coordination with public safety. If you have an accident, is it in Parkville, and should the Parkville police be there? Or is it in the county and the sheriff should be there? So there has to be both a relationship with the county commissioners and a working relationship on streets and public safety and things like that. So we'd have to continue, and if not, and increase that relationship with the county.
I think this is a great moment to kind of lean back into. I just don't know the right answer. And I would have to lean on the experts, to be quite frank with you, because I don't know the relationship between the city and the county and how those things work. I am constantly confused between the annexation of different parcels and how that comes to be, even between Kansas City. And so I think those conversations, exactly to what Dean said, the relationship first and foremost, to kind of understand, okay, how are we working together? What are their strategies? What are our strategies? And to better understand and then communicate those outward. Because again, I think communication is key. We're not going to be in these positions forever. We're going to come and we're going to go. And the folks that live here and that hold on, want to continue to live here, you guys need to be informed. You need to understand how this works and how community and government works. And I think this is a great opportunity to lean into, like, let's figure that out and let's communicate that out. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm confused. I don't know the right answer, and I'm not going to pretend to know the right answer.
I would just like to say, as an alderman, I am not directly in communication with the county commissioners. However, you may know that we did receive $1 million grant for Platte Landing Park. So, and there is always money available. When we received that grant, Weatherby Lake received money, Riverside received money, other cities and towns receive money at the same time, and there is always grant money available. So the city does work closely with the county regarding those types of funding.
All right, that concludes our online questions. If there are any other questions here in person, now's the time to ask them while we have just a couple minutes before 8.
Thank you. Actually, I don't have a question. This is just a cheap plug. I got a bunch of yard signs that I brought in from my car at the back of the room, if you'd like to pick them up on the way out. And the second thing I was going to say is, you had mentioned that Pike County was a fairly expensive place for young families to live. I also want to point out that the Parkville School District tax rate is actually the second lowest tax rate of any school district in the North Suburban area. So it's a fairly low tax rate.
As long as nobody else had a question, just to fill the time. I'm known for doing that. Actually, we're at 8. And I would like this question for everybody but Kevin. You get a pass for your barbecue. One of the pet projects that I'm really interested in moving forward is a charter for the city, a city charter. Right now, we're a 4th-class city, which sounds bad, but it's not, but a statutory city. And with charter form of government, we can do things like have initiative, referendum, and recall. So we can do things where, hey, the Board of Aldermen or the mayor isn't wanting to move forward on something, so the residents can petition to put something on the ballot. Or the city puts forth something, like a certain plan that certain people don't want, and then the residents can have a petition to reconsider that discussion or that motion. And then, of course, recall. I think everybody knows about that. So there's different thresholds for that. But I'm just curious, kind of, in your opinion, is the community at a point where maybe we can look at having our own city charter for pushing those types of things forward? It has potentially some good things with cleaning up some government activities and restoring faith for the people. I don't want to lead too much into that question, but just kind of want to get your perspective on is that something that you're interested in supporting?
Well, in general, I personally would be in favor of that, because by being a charter city, you have sort of more control. The city has more control over its future and what it does, and that is some of the things that Brian mentioned. I think they also generate a great conversation within the community of what you want your community to be. They don't always end up with the citizens approving the charter, but it does lead to a great conversation about the city and what we want. So I would be supportive of looking into pursuing that.
Oh, sorry. So kind of I don't want to say exactly what Dean said. Dean's last point, I think, was very salient, right? It starts the conversation. And I think that conversation then helps with education. And that education then helps make our jobs a lot easier. Because I'm going and speaking with people, I get questions around mask mandate or, you know, things that I have no control over it would have no control over being in a mayoral position. Same with like Board of Aldermen, right? When it comes to budget and planning and zoning and why are we doing this? Because it's always, you know, it's this way already. So I think for the sake of having a conversation and being an education point, absolutely for it. And I think some of the benefits that come from it, I'm absolutely, you know, I would, that you pointed out, I would support as well. I think we've seen over the last couple of years, those might have behooved us a little bit. But, you know, I think there's probably more of a discussion. I don't want to say yes or no, but I definitely think for the sake of education and starting the conversation with our community, I think it would be great.
Yeah, Brian, I'm all in on that. I think it would be a great initiative. I would love to see that happen for the city.
Any other questions before we close this up, or do you want to have comments from Nicholas or Stephen on that?
My first order of business for being here tonight is to get elected. So once I'm elected, I promise you I will get involved in all of these things because I care about Parkville and I live in Parkville and this is my home.
If I'm elected, I'll have a conversation with you about this because I'm just based on the descriptions here, I can't make a decision.
All right, well, it is 8 o'clock. We answered our questions on Zoom, and it looks like we answered the questions here. But if you come up with any more questions, I'm sure the aldermen have, or the candidates have channels to ask. The Parkville Living Center is a public channel that can be used to ask questions as well. And I look forward to evolving how we think about civics. Let's be sure to vote on April 5th. Let's be sure to help support other people vote, drive people to polling centers, and let's do all we can to share this information. This video will be available tomorrow on YouTube and on our website, so you can slice and dice it and share little segments however you'd like. The whole video will be available, and thank you all so much for attending. Thank you for, yes, let's give the candidates a round of applause. And the community too, this is a great show up, and I think it speaks to the involvement that the community wants to have, and so let's continue this movement, and have a good night.